All right, welcome to the Chapter 8 presentation lecture, the 6-column worksheet. Please make sure that you have your notes with you to follow along with the presentation lecture as we go through the material, as well as any demo problems that might be out there posted on Classroom that you can follow along and try to complete as we go through the material. Let's get started. Okay, as we review the accounting cycle, when we get to the portion of the cycle where we are going to create a 6-column worksheet, we are over here in step number 6. So at this point now we are starting to determine what we have in terms of the balances from our accounts, and then working through to see what they will be as the accounting cycle continues. So the next step in the accounting cycle is to create this 6-column worksheet. Sixth step, and what you need to realize is that the worksheet is a working paper used to collect information from the ledger accounts in one place. So it takes all of our ledger accounts and places it in one worksheet. That way we have all of the accounts listed and also the balances of those accounts. The worksheet gathers all information in one place needed to complete the other end of the period activities, which we will get to in future chapters. When it comes to preparing a worksheet, there are a number of steps to follow. The first one is to write the heading on the worksheet. And we will go through the examples of how to do this in some of our demonstration problems. Then there's going to be a trial balance column. And the trial balance column is where we're going to list all of the accounts and their balances, whether or not they are debit or they are credit side balances. We will then prove the trial balance and determine that our debits equal our credits. If at any time our debits do not equal our credits, we have to go back and find our error before moving forward. Then we are going to extend the amounts to the balance sheet section and the income statement section. What you need to remember here is that the balance sheet is going to have all of our permanent accounts, and the income statement section is going to have all of our temporary accounts. Total the balance sheet and the income statement columns. And we will notice then after we do the math here that we are going to have columns that are not equal. This is right. It's proper to have columns that are not equal because it's going to tell us then whether or not over the course of this accounting period if we have a net income or a net loss. Then we will enter the income or loss in the correct columns, total, and then rule the income and balance sheet sections. Okay, so those are the 8 steps that you need to take into consideration and must take place before the worksheet can be completed. Okay, here's an example of a worksheet. Let's go through the process. So when we have our accounts listed here, we have all the accounts listed, their numbers and account titles. Then in the trial balance portion, we are going to list all of our debit side balance accounts and then all of our credit side balance accounts. Now we are going to prove a single rule in any accounting document indicates a calculation will take place below it, and then a double rule indicates that the calculation is complete. All right, so based off of this example, we can see that the trial balance is correct, and we can now move on to transferring our accounts over to the proper columns. All right, problem 8.1. Let's give this a try. Simon's Garden Shop worksheet for the year ended December 31st, 2013. That is your heading. Holt's Hardware Store worksheet for the quarter ended September 30th, 2013. These are examples of headings that would go on the top of a worksheet, step 1 of constructing the worksheet. Problem 8.2 and 8.3. We will go through these in class and you will be working on these as well independently, examples of these to be able to complete your worksheet. All right, so now we have the trial balance. All of our accounts are listed here. Here's the trial balance, listing all the debit side balance accounts and credit side balance accounts, and it does prove out. Notice how the sum of the debits equals the sum of the credits with a single rule and a double rule in its proper places. So if we review, what is the purpose of the worksheet? What is the purpose of ruling in accounting? The purpose of the worksheet is to put all of the balances of all of the accounts in the ledger in one place. And the purpose of ruling in accounting is telling accountants when calculations take place and when calculations have concluded. The balance sheet section. Okay, so the balance sheet, after the trial balance is proved, which means it equals, then you extend the account amounts to the balance sheet section. These are the permanent accounts. It's going to contain all of our assets, all of our liabilities, and all of our owner's equity accounts, the permanent ones. So, for example, we are going to carry over the balances from our trial balance: cash, asset; petty cash, asset; Butler cleaning supplies, liability; Dale office supplies, liability; Ben Furman capital, capital account; Ben Furman drawing, another contra capital account. Those all get carried over to the balance sheet side. All the remaining accounts, the 400 and 500s, which is the revenues and the expenses, are going to get carried over to the income statement. So the income statement section is the account balances to the income statement section are all of our temporary accounts, which contains our revenue accounts and our expense accounts. So we carry those forward. And now we have income summary, which is an account that is listed, but it is not used. But we do list all of the accounts in our chart of accounts. Cleaning revenue gets carried over to the income statement. Advertising expense, miscellaneous expense, rent expense, repair expense, and utilities expense all get carried over to the income statement. All right, so now we have to total the income statement and balance sheet sections. If we total the income statement, we see these numbers here do not equal. We also see the same thing happening on the balance sheet. But the key to proving this here is to make sure that the difference between the two income statement columns equals the difference between the two balance sheet columns. So we're going to use what's called the matching principle. We want to match the expenses with the revenue. It's going to allow a business owner to see how much of their income they are spending. Net income is going to also tell a business owner whether or not there is money coming in and we are profitable, otherwise if we take a loss. So net income is the amount left after expenses are subtracted from the revenue. It's going to increase the owner's equity account. It's entered as a debit in the income statement section and a credit in the balance sheet because it has increased owner's equity. So let's take a look to see what this looks like, because just saying it might be a little bit confusing. So we notice that we have a net income. When our revenues are greater than our expenses, we have our net income. So our net income is going to be $36,043 listed in the debit side column of the income statement. Then we can prove the two columns and indicate that the two columns equal. If all works out properly, the difference between the two balance sheet columns will be the same as net income, in this case $36,043, and added to the credit side column of the balance sheet. And then in those two columns, the balance sheet debit and credit columns are proven. It means that they have to add up and equal the same thing, equal the same number, in this case 9,072. Now, if we have a net loss in the worksheet, the numbers are going to go in the opposite columns. Credit side column for an income statement account, or the income statement section, and debit side balance for the balance sheet. So in this case, we have a net loss, therefore our expenses are greater than our revenues, so we have a net loss of $100. So we write net loss in the account name, and then we will put $100 in the credit of the income statement, $100 in the debit of the balance sheet, and then do the math to prove that our numbers equal. So 2,000 equals 2,000 in the income statement, and 5,500 equals 5,500 in the balance sheet. Now completing the worksheet now is going to include indicating on the bottom of the worksheet whether or not we have a net income or a net loss, and then adding up to prove that the columns equal, and then putting in the proper rules. Notice that this is a single rule indicating calculations follow. Line 2, a single rule indicating calculations will follow. Once we have done all of our calculations, a double rule is going to go underneath the income statement debit and credit columns and the balance sheet debit and credit columns, indicating to the business owner that the worksheet is complete and it has been proven and ruled. So as a review, explain the matching principle. Matching whether or not we have a net income or net loss, depending upon whether or not we have more expenses than we do revenues. What is the effect of net income on the owner's equity account? Well, we know that if we have a net income, which means our revenues are greater than our expenses, it's going to make the owner's equity account increase in value. All right. So let's take a look at problems 8.4 and 8.5. Take a look at problem 8.4. Here are our numbers. We have income statement and balance sheet numbers. We have to determine and prove and rule that this is going to be working. So you're going to be doing this in problems 8.4 and 8.5. This is the solution. The question is, can you get to that solution when you do the problems on your own? This is what it's going to look like. We obviously have a net income in this situation because our revenues are greater than our expenses. All right, problem 8.6, we have a net loss. Therefore, our revenues are less than our expenses, indicating net loss. This concludes the presentation lecture for Chapter 8 in completing a worksheet. As you go through the problems, feel free to reference the presentation lecture to help guide you through if you have questions. Otherwise, ask questions as needed to me as you are going through and doing the problems, as well as some of your classmates while you're working. I will see you in class next time we meet.